At the end of the summer of 55 BC, Julius Caesar decided to embark on an expedition to an unknown island located north of the European continent. This island would become known as Britannia, and centuries later, it would become the famous Great Britain. However, to carry out this ambitious mission, Caesar faced a great difficulty: the lack of precise information about the island, its inhabitants, and the ports where he could land. Most of the merchants who traded with the Britons were not very helpful, as they feared losing their trade monopoly if they revealed too much about the place. If you are a history lover, subscribe now so you don't miss the most fascinating updates from around the world. Faced with this lack of data, Caesar decided to send one of his military tribunes, Gaius, on a reconnaissance mission in the region. Gaius, a brave and experienced soldier, headed towards the area we now know as the County of Kent. During his expedition, Gaius remained in the area for 5 days but did not dare to venture further inland for fear of an unexpected attack by the natives. Finally, after these days of exploration, Gaius returned, leaving Caesar with little knowledge about the island but with the desire to move forward with his plan. Unwilling to be deterred, Caesar gathered his troops and decided to launch a large-scale expedition to the island of Britannia, regardless of the risk. Thus, in the autumn of that same year, he prepared to cross the English Channel with a powerful Roman fleet. Despite his efforts, Caesar and his soldiers soon discovered that they were facing fierce resistance. Upon reaching the island shores, in what is now Dover, the native Britons, organized in great numbers, fully occupied the mountains and cliffs along the beach, preventing the Roman troops from landing. The Britons, armed with javelins and other weapons, began hurling projectiles at the Roman fleet from their high positions. Caesar was forced to relocate the fleet and search for a more accessible place to land, but the problems continued. The shores were filled with British warriors who, with chariots and horses, were prepared to resist any Roman incursion. After several failed attempts, the Romans were forced to disembark in deep waters, which made access even more difficult, as they had to wade up to their chests with their heavy armor and equipment. Despite the difficulties, Caesar ordered the use of catapults mounted on ships to disperse the Britons and clear a path to the beach. This bombardment forced the British warriors to retreat temporarily, allowing the Romans to establish a camp on the beach. Shortly after, Caesar received an embassy from the Britons, who seemed willing to negotiate peace. Caesar demanded an end to the attacks, the release of Roman prisoners, and the dissolution of the coalition of British tribes resisting his invasion. The native Britons, terrified by the arrival of more Roman troops and reinforcements from the cavalry, began to consider Caesar's terms, as they found themselves at a disadvantage. However, just as the negotiations were about to be finalized, an unexpected turn of events occurred. A violent storm suddenly arose, destroying much of the Roman fleet and scattering the ships at sea, causing great damage to Caesar's forces. Faced with this new setback, the Roman soldiers in the camp were once again attacked by the British warriors, who seized the opportunity to strike quickly. Despite the losses, Caesar did not abandon his objective and, after reorganizing his troops and resources, decided to temporarily withdraw to the continent, with the promise of returning the following year with a larger and better prepared army. The following year, Caesar returned with 5 legions of Roman soldiers, as well as a greater cavalry force and a fleet of improved warships, built with the most advanced technology of the time. This time, the Romans had better access to the terrain and the necessary knowledge to plan the invasion. Upon reaching Britannia, they encountered strong resistance led by a British chieftain named Cassivellaunus, who had previously fought against other tribes on the island and had recently overthrown the king of the Trinovants. Cassivellaunus intended to confront the Roman invasion with his troops. The battle erupted when the Roman cavalry came face to face with the British war chariots, and although the Britons fought fiercely, the Romans, with their superior military discipline and training, forced the natives to retreat into the nearby forests. However, the Britons did not give up and, in a surprise attack, emerged from the forests once more, determined to resist the Roman advance. Caesar, faced with this new attack, organized a more aggressive strategy and deployed 3 of his legions along with the cavalry to encircle the Britons and launch a direct assault. The ensuing battle resulted in a decisive victory for the Romans, who completely annihilated the British forces and gained control over much of the island. After their defeat, Cassivellaunus, realizing that the Romans were superior in open battle, decided to dissolve his army and resort to guerrilla tactics, relying on the speed of his forces and his knowledge of the terrain. The British chieftain began infiltrating his troops into enemy territory, avoiding direct confrontation with the Romans but maintaining pressure on Caesar's forces. However, Caesar, determined to completely subdue Britannia, continued his advance northward, crossing the River Thames and facing the remaining British forces attempting to resist. Chieftain Cassivellaunus, seeing the unstoppable arrival of the Roman army, finally decided to seek the help of other British leaders and organize one last combined attack. However, Caesar's Roman army, better trained and better equipped, continued advancing and quickly took control of British strongholds. After several skirmishes, the Britons were forced to surrender, and Cassivellaunus, realizing he had no other options, opted to negotiate peace. Eager to return to the continent due to unrest in Gaul, Caesar accepted Cassivellaunus's surrender but left Mandubratius, a British ally, as king of the Trinovants, thereby securing the loyalty of the tribe. Despite not having fully conquered Britannia, Caesar had successfully established Roman influence on the island, and for over a century, Rome maintained diplomatic and trade relations with the Britons, even though the island was not formally part of the Roman Empire. Through his victory, Caesar left the door open for a future complete conquest of Britannia. Although Caesar did not achieve the total conquest of Britannia in his time, his expedition had a significant impact on the region, paving the way for future Roman campaigns on the island. For a time, Britannia remained under Rome's sphere of influence, marking a milestone in the territorial expansion of the Roman Empire. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Don't forget to subscribe and comment on what topics you would like us to explore in future videos.